So this is part 2 of my discussion on my experience with malrotation as an adult, age 59, getting diagnosed with volvulus close to rupture and having emergency life-saving major surgery a couple of weeks ago. So I was talking in the last video about my history, and the reason I have done this is because I haven't been able to find too many videos from other people online. I've looked at research papers and read a few and tried to take as much away from it as I can, but there's just not a lot of information on the condition in adults. So leading up to, I was saying in the last video how over time my issues with eating and my diet and not being able to eat much at a time had gotten progressively worse over time due to a workplace incident that had been extremely stressful, but I hadn't realized how bad it was because I'd just been so used to my whole life adjusting what I ate and adjusting, like I ate very small meals because it would hurt. So I would just stop. And I used to even have this thing where if I was really hungry, I could take a few big mouthfuls and that would be it. I'm done now. Like, I just didn't eat like how normal people eat. But having been to doctor's appointments since childhood and through my adult years and with the same presenting issue, and nothing was ever tested or done, and I was so used to it that I didn't overplay it. I was just used to it, and it just is how it is. And I don't think I even really notice the pain as much anymore because it's just there and that's it. I can make it go away if I really restrict myself and make some changes. So anyway, what happened was for the last 2.5 years after the workplace incident that was extremely stressful, it had gotten worse, and I'd have these really bad periods of up to 6 months where I couldn't do anything. My stomach would hurt and I'd have to adapt and have to only leave the house for a few hours a day and come back, and I'd just have to rest. But still, it seemed quite normal. Like, it really didn't seem that bad because from the workplace incident, I had pretty severe PTSD, so I didn't really notice and realised that it was from my stomach. I just thought, oh, it's a PTSD, and I went to Chinese medicine and they did acupuncture for the PTSD, which was the stomach issues is what I presented with, and also with my jaw. And so I just kind of put it all down to PTSD. And so about 2 or 3 weeks before I had the volvulus, I hope I'm saying that word right, which is where I got to the rupture point, because I had a 360-degree twist. I had gone to my daughter's house. So I have 5 children, 3 daughters, 2 sons, and I'd gone to my daughter's house and I went to buy food for us to cook for dinner, and I hadn't had anything since breakfast, so I quickly got some sushi, had that for lunch, which was really late, and then we went and cooked. And it was only a small gap of hours between eating again, and I don't do that. I have to have big gaps or little tiny snacks. That's how I used to eat all the time, because I could only have a meal that wasn't very big. And like I said in the last video, I used to look at everybody eating and think, how do people, do they only have one meal a day? Like, how do they eat that much? Because I can only eat smaller meals. So, and then I'd have to have a large amount of hours in between, unless it was I had all these eating things that I had to do for years. So I'd have to have a meal in the morning and then another one a couple of hours later, and then space them out, and then nothing till morning. So I'd stop eating about 6 o'clock, and that was it till morning. So a couple of weeks ago, I had this late lunch, and then I had dinner on top of it. And I remember thinking, whoa, it felt like one meal went directly, I don't know how to describe it. One meal went directly on top of the other meal. And I was like, whoa, that's really uncomfortable. That feels like it's just 2 meals sitting on top of each other. I won't be able to eat again for a while, and it'll come right. And it did. It took me a few days to feel like it wasn't like this weird block. I don't know how to describe it besides 2 meals sitting on top of each other. Anyway, got better. And then a couple of days before I went to the hospital, I had a strange pain just along my left hip, like a muscle pull, and I hadn't done anything. At this stage, I wasn't doing much of life. I was a bit, not lazy, but I just had to, I don't know, I just was restricted so much. And So I was like, that's odd. Why would I have a muscle pain when I haven't done anything? And didn't think any more of it. And then the day of the emergency, I woke up in the morning and I was thinking, why does my lower stomach, like really low down, feel like it's burning? That's odd. But I just kind of like thought about it for a bit, and eventually it went away, and I was like, and then I put my skirt on to get dressed to go out, and I was like, why is my skirt tight? That's odd. And all day, I went out for the day and I had tummy aches on and off, and I was like, that's a bit weird. And I had lunch. And I came home and I thought, you know what? I don't feel hungry. Maybe I'll just have some cashews and a bit of chocolate, and that will do me till morning. Weird, I know. And I don't react good to cashews at the best of times, so I had some cashews, and then I remembered it was about 4 o'clock, and I was like, I've got a tummy ache and cramping pains. I'll have a bath. So I have a bath, and then I get out and it's like, it's still there. So I take some Panadol, and I'm like, that's really odd. It's really hurting. And so basically from here, my chest down to my pelvis, it was like crushing like this, and I was like, and it was really hurting, like really hurting. I'm like, this is really weird. And so then I decided I might have IBS or appendicitis. So I looked them up, and it's really sore on the right where the appendix is. And then there was all these other like tests that you can do to see if your appendix is hurting. I was like, yeah, no, that's not happening, but I must have IBS. I must have IBS. So this is really hurting. I'm going to go to the hospital because I think that I don't know how to get past this pain. I have all these ways of managing pain that I've always done in my stomach. And I'm like, this is really, why am I feeling like I'm being crushed like this? So I was like, this is strange. So we go to the hospital, and I couldn't drive. I get to my son's house and he drove me. Then I was having trouble breathing, and he was like, I want to stay. I'm like, no, I'll be fine. It's nothing. It's just probably IBS, but you know, I never complain about it too much because it's just always there, but it's not that bad. And then, so I go to the hospital, and they tell me, and I am psychic. But I wasn't. Well, actually I was, but I'll talk about that later. I go to the hospital, and they tell me it's going to be 5 hours wait, and I'm thinking in my head, no, it's not. And then they say to me, oh, well, you won't get a bed, you'll only get a chair. And I'm like, okay. But my youngest daughter had called me and said, I want you to promise me you will not leave the hospital till you know what's wrong, because I don't do medical treatment very often, like never, hardly ever. And I said, okay, I promise. And then they gave me Panadol in the emergency waiting room, and I thought, oh, their Panadol works. Mine must have been out of date. That's why I was in pain, because it settled. And then they saw me, which it wasn't that long away, and they did a blood test, and they said you don't have the markers for appendicitis, but when they were feeling my stomach, they were like, there's something there because it's hurting and it's very tender. So they sent me for a contrast CT scan, which I'm so impressed that in the middle of the night, they're going to send you for a CT scan on the spot. And I had that, and that was when they suddenly decided that I did get a bed, and I was straight away sent up to the surgery ward, and they came and told me, and I think the guy telling me just seemed so serious and so concerned. He said, we didn't find appendicitis, we found something else. And they told me about it, and I didn't really understand, because here's me thinking, oh yeah, I've just got IBS. And so I didn't realize it was really serious. They told me that you need to go up to the ward and you need to be checked into hospital immediately, and you can't have anything to eat or drink. We're probably going to be doing surgery in the morning, or we're going to take you to the specialist hospital. Then when morning came, I just kind of wasn't thinking anymore about it. It didn't even hurt by then. It had worn off, and I just thought, oh, okay, I'll just went to sleep, rang my kids, went to sleep. I was a bit worried, like, what are they telling me? I've never even heard of this. Well, they hadn't actually told me. They just said it was twisted, and I thought, they told me my intestines had twisted, and I thought that, being a typical woman, what did I do to cause that? Like, what have I done that made that happen? Of course. And then the next morning I met with the surgeon, and he explained to me that it was very serious, that they'd shifted every operation around to put me in first, that it was a 360-degree twist. They were worried about rupturing, that they'd spoken to the specialist, and the specialist had said operate ASAP. They didn't want me to go to the specialist hospital, and he explained the different options to me for surgery, and yeah, it was very quick, very fast. And he also told me that it was congenital and that I'd been born with it. I was shocked. But anyway, there'll be part 3.